What's going on, everybody? Here's the 70.3 La Quinta race recap. So we're gonna start kind of like day before the race because I feel like preparation for a race is part of it. So Friday, flew out from OKC to San Diego. And reason I chose San Diego is because I'm actually here in San Diego the week after for a work conference. So landed in San Diego on Friday, picked up a rental car, and then drove to Palm Springs and picked up my wife Mary in Palm Springs. She flew directly from OKC to Palm Springs so that she didn't have to do as much driving. She had a flight credit on a different airline, so we, logistically kind of worked out. Picked her up from the airport. We got lunch, then picked up my bike, had to do a couple things with my bike, that sort of thing, so wasn't able to make the time to get to registration that day because I wanted to get hydrated, wanted to rest, wanted to get checked into the hotel, so timing just didn't work out for me to check in for the race on Friday. So we went and had dinner at a nice restaurant, Lavender Bistro. So if you ever come to the Palm Springs area, highly recommend that restaurant. It was super nice, cool scenery and atmosphere, and great food. Then Friday, we started early in the morning, when we had breakfast at 7 o'clock, and went to Ironman Village right at 9 o'clock and just started getting everything ready. Ended up having my bike looked at by the bike shop there in the village because the bike shop that I had my bike to in Palm Springs, they put the chain on backwards. It wasn't shifting right. There's a lot of kind of problems. So I wanted them to look at it, and luckily I did it when I did because I didn't have to wait that long. But there was multiple people waiting what seemed like a few hours trying to get their bike in to get serviced. So they took their time, got it in a good spot, and then I took my bike over to the race day wheels tent, had them put on a disc wheel. I did an athlete briefing while the disc wheel was getting put on. Then after the athlete briefing, picked up my bike. It was pretty much all assembled like it would be, ready to go for the race. I did my shakeout ride from the Ironman Village, just did a 30-minute kind of piddle around the Palm Springs area, just testing everything out, feeling what it was like to race on a disc wheel because I'd never raced on a disc wheel before, all that kind of stuff. And brought the bike back, checked everything out, everything felt good, and then went and did T2 check-in, so dropped my shoes, my race bib, hat, glasses, had gels with me, and that was one thing that was important, was I brought everything with me that morning so that we could get everything placed for the race, so that way I wasn't scrambling later in the afternoon or the next day. And it was a good thing too, because I come to find out that once you placed your stuff in transition 2, the morning of the race you weren't able to go back to transition 2 and check on your stuff or whatever it was. Once you set it, it's kind of locked in. So with it being a 2 transition course, that was helpful to know that. And it's always good to check with your race director before a race like that, because if you don't have everything with you the day before for transition 2, you need to make sure. And kind of the other thing that I like to do too is rehearse where is my stuff in transition 2, so that way when you're getting off the bike you know where to go. So did all that, went and grabbed lunch before going over to T1, and then T1 dropped the bike off, did the wetsuit decontamination, all that kind of stuff. So that was super interesting and cool. Got that dropped, and then went back to the room, watched Miracle on 34th Street, and hadn't watched that movie all the way through, so that was really interesting. I enjoyed that, and just tried to relax as much as possible. Then went to Chipotle for dinner, Just had basic rice and chicken, and I'm a big believer in just like super basic foods before a race because you just don't want to upset your stomach. So did that, and then Sunday morning woke up super duper early, like 2:45. The plan was to sleep until like 3:15, but of course I'm neurotic about races, and so like as soon as my body kind of hit around the seven and change hour of sleep mark, I woke up, and then my brain starts turning, thinking about all the moving pieces for the race, and I have a hard time just like laying there doing nothing. So I got up, had my coffee, had my breakfast, my normal every race day breakfast, and got myself ready to go. Got my tri-suit on, grabbed my sweatpants and all that stuff that I was gonna give away essentially, and got to the race site super early. I think I got to the shuttles like around 4:10, 4:15, and hopped on the shuttles and was probably one of the first 5 shuttles over there. Was that necessary? Probably not, but did it give me a lot more extra time to do things like airing up my tires, getting air into the disc wheel tire because I'd let some pressure out the day before, just so that it overnight / in the afternoon it wouldn't have popped or something like that. So had the bike tent in transition air the tires up, which was really nice. That was super helpful, and just gave myself a bunch of extra time to like get everything set the way that I needed it, and then just was hanging out in transition, trying to just get ready for the race. I prefer to be early rather than late, and it kind of worked out in this situation. Got my wetsuit on, kind of did some warm-ups. I had a stretch band and stretch cord, so did some of that, just did some basic stretching, just kind of killing time before the race start because just didn't want to miss anything or whatever. So got into the corral, kind of lined up in my normal start area with the correct time slot. Come to find out typically that a lot of people lined up in my group that were probably not supposed to be in that group, but I feel like that happens every race, and so sometimes I still get surprised by people doing that, but I feel like it's something that I just need to accept type of thing. But got lined up, started the race, and the water was colder than I prepared myself for initially. I touched the water in the acclimation area. It was not as cold as once you got fully in. It was like getting into a cold plunge a little bit. But in a way, it was kind of good because it kind of got me hyped up a little bit, and I was already hyped up from the race start. So adrenaline was pumping, and I just powered through it. Just swam and kept moving, and the more I kept moving, the better I felt. I did also, one tip that my buddy DJ gave me was I did do 2 wet swim caps. So I got an extra swim cap from Ironman, and that helped tremendously. I didn't do a neoprene swim cap because I didn't want to feel like I was getting choked by the strap. And that was a super helpful tip for the swim because it definitely kept me a little bit more insulated. My head did not feel cold whatsoever, but it was not like restrictive, so to speak. It didn't feel foreign to me. The only thing I would say that felt different about it was because I did swim cap goggles like over the first swim cap and then second swim cap over the top, is that it actually made my goggles feel a little bit loose. So I had to make sure that I pushed my goggles and suctioned them to my face pretty well, and I even ended up licking the edges of the seals that go around my eyes to make sure that they sealed to my face really well. But it ended up working out really well, and really didn't have very many issues on the swim other than just running into people and people just being too slow in that group. And thinking that they could go fast, and then they get into the cold water and then they start freaking out and backstroking before we even make the first buoy. So that was interesting, but it's part of the game, and it's not a wave start, so you're not getting karate chopped, but it's always part of the story. So we started the swim, probably by that first turn buoy. So like the way that the course is set up, it's kind of like a weird V shape. By that first turn buoy, I was feeling okay, where I was warmed up, feeling strong, and was kind of getting into a groove. But there was still a lot of people kind of around me, and I always, I feel like by that point usually things should start spreading out, but I think because this was a sold out race, there's just so many people that you just have to deal with more people around you than you would in like a smaller or local race. So it really wasn't until the halfway point that things started to string out and spread out, and you had a little bit more room. Made it through the swim. Swim was about a 1 minute PR for me, which was pretty good. I mean, any PR you can get, I'll take it, and with cold water and all that kind of thing, I was stoked about that. Didn't know it at the time when I was getting out of the water. I was just trying to focus on executing and doing the race, but ended up being a 1 minute PR, so that was super cool. And then ran into transition. Transition area was pretty long. Like you had to go up a boat ramp with sand and that sort of thing, and then you had to grab your bike bag and make a right-hand turn into the bike transition area. Luckily, I had everything kind of pretty well set up the way that I wanted, and I knew what I needed to do. So just getting my socks on, that's always a challenge. Just with wet feet and all that kind of thing, but it was extra tough because I was cold, so like my motor functions weren't as good because I was cold, but was able to get my socks on and got my shoes on. I didn't have my bike shoes clipped to the bike. I've never been a huge believer in doing that because, especially for like a longer distance triathlon, I'm not racing this for money or anything like that. So I felt like it's always been safer / more reliable to be like, hey, I'm putting my shoes on now and then run through transition with my bike shoes on and clipped on and strapped on, and then just hopping on my bike versus having them like set on the pedals and having rubber bands and all that kind of thing. Like I feel like introducing rubber bands is just another area that can cause a mechanical problem, can cause just logistical issues. So to me, it's not worth it. I'm an age grouper. It doesn't really matter to me, right? I'm not going out there trying to win. I'm going out there to do the best that I can for myself. So luckily I had, one of the biggest tips that they had too was, hey, have your bike geared in a low gear position, because the transition is kind of uphill. And when you get to the top of the hill, then you're trying to pedal uphill right away. So they reiterated that at the briefings, but like if you're going to do this race in 2026 and you watch it like right before that, make sure that you have your bike geared in a lower gear set or a high enough gear setting where it's easy to pedal right away, so that you're not getting on the bike and then potentially falling because it's over geared. Done that before, not at this race, but I've done it before. So just having all those things, little things, prepared so that you're not, to make the race a good one. So we hopped onto the bike, and bike course was awesome. Some teeny rough patches here and there on the road, but overall a fantastic road, super flat. There's a couple false flat areas type of thing, and you were going into a headwind a little bit, but overall, I mean, it was a fantastic bike course. Couple of, I want to say like 3 or 4 180 turnarounds, which some people might gripe about that because you have to slow down and then you have to speed up and all that kind of stuff, and I could see that. But I also liked it for the fact that like you could sit up, you could stretch your back a little bit and give yourself a teeny bit of a break to then turn around, get back going, and then lock back in on aero. I will say this was probably the one bike ride that I was able to hold aero for the longest. all of my other previous half triathlons, my bike fit has not been perfect, and I have in my lower right back, I've just had issues where just muscle tightness and all that kind of stuff where I just felt like I could never hold aero for that long. This race, I think because it was a flat course and we had those kind of brakes built in, that I was able to hold aero for a lot longer, just based around that. And so that was super cool. Was able to do that and enjoyed the flat course. There was a section where we went through like a racetrack community. That was super cool too. So there was a lot of different cool, interesting elements part of this bike course. And then of course the scenery was fantastic. Mountains in the background, farm fields, all kinds of cool stuff. So there's stuff to look at and see the entire bike ride. Came in, I think my bike time was like, I'll have to look at the app, like 2 hours and 27 minutes, like shy of 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 28 minutes, almost on the dot, which that was a big PR for me because I'll pull it up here. My bike time last year was 2:39. That was a PR for me, 2:39. So almost a full, actually over a full 10 minutes on the bike that I gained. I think a little bit, it was a little bit fitness, because I had a good prep. I was healthy for all 14 weeks of the prep. And then also the disc wheel, I really do think it helps. Now, how much can I quantify it helped? Hard for me to say. The other thing too is this bike course, very low elevation, up and down type of thing. So like that was part of it too. But during my race prep, I was doing laps around Hefner. So I was ready for the constant pedaling, no uphills, just holding power for 2 hours at a time type of thing. So I got myself ready for that type of bike. So was super stoked about that. Again, didn't really know that it was a 10-minute PR. Just went out, executed as well as I could, and let the cards fall where they were. So ran into transition. Again, a little bit longer transition, but I think that's typical with half Ironmans just because there's so many people, you have to spread out, the transition areas are huge. So dropped my bike in my spot, had my spot picked out. I was lucky enough that I kind of had my stuff laid out on top of my bag so I could see my shoes. I had, bright red Asics shoes, so it made it easy for me to bring my bike in, rack it, get my stuff on, and I did my second transition in about, I want to say like 2 minutes flat almost. So got my stuff on, sunglasses, bib, all that kind of stuff, grabbed my gels and ran out and was feeling good. Got my bib on, all that kind of stuff, was cruising along. First lap clicked off and it was like 7 and change, can't remember the exact, maybe 7:20, 7:15, something like that. And I'm like, okay, feeling good. But I have done half Ironmans before where I've done like a 7:20 or 7:30 on the first mile, and then on the back half I blew up. I said, okay, like let's not push it too hard here. Let's just hold, in the 150 heart range, like just feel consistent, feel strong, but don't push it too hard. Well, the second mile came by and I was in the 7:30s, and I'm like, okay. Third mile came by and I'm still like holding in the 7:30s. I'm like, well, okay, all right, like this is real, like this is going. So just kind of held it together. My tummy did feel a little bit weird because of how much I ate on the bike. My body I could feel my body processing those carbs and that sort of thing, which was okay because I think it helped on the back half of the run, because I was almost over, I overfueled a little bit at the beginning, but on the back half I was able to tap into that fuel later down the road. So, but yeah, just kept on pushing and holding, in the 7s, and every time I looked down at my watch, my pace was in the 740s, 730s, 710, you know, anything with a 7, I was like, okay, I'm happy. Like, this is super cool. And just kind of held it all together. And right around mile 8 or 9 was when my legs started to hurt. I'm sure most endurance athletes, you know, when you're doing long distance triathlons or endurance events, you're going to hit a point where it goes from a respiratory and, you know, mental fatigue to, okay, your muscles are starting to fatigue and start to hurt. And that's where I started feeling it. And you could probably tell, I mean, on my Garmin or Strava, that's where like the miles 9 and 10, I think were some of my slower miles, because that fatigue was starting to set in. I was feeling during this portion of the race, you know, my stomach did have a little bit of like trouble, but not like physical trouble, just like I felt it, but was able to work through that. I was able to take another gel at, I think, mile 3 or 4, and so just continue to fuel and continue to push, and just trying to hold on until about a mile. At about mile 11 was when I kind of made the mental switch of like, okay, we're less than 5K left, like let's start to hurt more, like leaning into that pain rather than just like sustaining and holding. Like, let's lean into the pain, let's push the pace a little bit more back into the 730s, 740s, and let's see what we can do. So I kind of made that mental switch of like, all right, let's start leaning in, let's start trying to push a little bit harder, because we're almost at the end. You know, we got, you know, if I'm doing 730 pace or whatever, you know, it's 15 minutes. Like, I can hold it together for 15 minutes. Like, I'm good enough that I feel like I can hold it together for 15 minutes. So leaned in. There was actually a guy that I had been trading spots with, and he said, oh man, I'm trying to keep up with you. And I said, okay, let's hurt together, buddy. Like, let's go. You know, we got 2 miles left. Let's hang together. Let's push, and let's get to the finish line. And so hung with this guy for a little bit, and then just kept pushing, you know, trying to increase my cadence and just hold it there type of thing. Like, heart rate and respiratory wise, I was in a great spot. Like, did not feel super out of breath. Maybe pushed it into that threshold area a little bit where like I was breathing a little bit harder, but like nothing that I couldn't sustain. And then just held it there until the very end of the race, and came home 4 hours and 45 minutes, and just super proud of myself. Pretty sure that's a PR for the half marathon overall on that distance. Like, I never ran a half marathon that fast before, let alone after a 1.2 mile swim and a 56 mile bike. But it was amazing. It was a wonderful experience, a great race, and just like, I'm super proud that I was able to put together like 14 really solid weeks of training and then execute in a way that was super awesome, super strong, and I couldn't be happier. So it was a finish line that I had been chasing for over 3 years, and I'm just excited to finally accomplish that goal. What's interesting about it too is, like, you know, looking at my transition times, like if I were to do a race that were like a one transition course or something like that, like, could my time be even better than that? Like, probably. But like, at the end of the day, like, everybody was on the same playing field, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, it's just the mental games that you play with yourself type of thing. But yeah, that was the end of the race. It was an awesome experience. I was so happy to have Mary there. She was cheering me on the whole time. Her support was awesome, and I couldn't do this without her. And so, you know, I'm just super thankful for her that I'm able to do this and enjoy this sport. And so, yeah, that's kind of my race recap, and enjoyed it. And yeah, looking forward to 2026. You know, this is my end of 2025. Of course, I don't think there's you know, hardly any races left the rest of the year. So, but trying to already make plans for 2026. So When that's all established and I get signed up for stuff, I'll share it here. And yeah. Anyway, thanks for listening, guys, and hope you have a great one.